Welcome to Partners in Health and Biz with your host, Wendy Meyerhoff. Tune in every Saturday, 9 a.m. for great shows about obtaining and maintaining health, business, and finance. Learn from the experts here at pihradio.net. And now, broadcasting from the Partners in Health and Biz studio, here's Wendy.
Welcome back to Partners in Health and Business. I am Wendy Meyerhoff, the co-anchor who's been pleased to join this year with Gail Dixon, who founded this broadcast about 7 years ago. And Gail is our genius at bringing in folks to talk health and wellness. And what we wanted to do is discuss an issue that we have to prompt people about, both as writers and radio podcast hosts, to make sure they understand what our listeners need, because Gail is talking not to the clinical people. I do the business side, so I can be talking to doctors and computer techs and so forth. But Gail's talking to all sorts of people on the regular level, right, Gail?
That's right. Everyday people. And people that, go to the doctor and they need help. And so I'm just right there with the people trying to find out what they want, what they need, and how I can help them.
Yeah, so the thing that's become trendy, I've been teaching it for 20 years, but it's suddenly more and more trendy, so we figured we had to discuss it. And they will get your broadcast on this same discussion, but we're doing it a little differently here on the business side of Partners in Health and Biz. So when we talk about business professionals having to understand lay language, first of all, explain to listeners, in case there are a few folks out there who still really don't understand, what is lay language?
Well, it's pretty simple, even though it sounds a little complicated. But lay language is really language that people can understand. It's language that's not medical terminology. It's language that would be easily understood by your everyday person. For example, if somebody said that they have a condition that was called vasomotoritis. And the doctor said, it's very easy. We diagnosed you, and your condition is vasomotoritis. And so what does that mean to the average person? That doesn't mean anything. It's like the first thing you'll say is, what in the world is that? Am I going to die?
Yeah.
When in reality, it's really just an allergic cold. It's a cold, and it's really, you're just allergic. You can be allergic to dust mites. You can be allergic to pollen, and you can just the simple being exposed to the cold weather, being out in the cold, and when you go out, it causes the blood vessels in your nose to expand, and then it causes you to sneeze. So, but if somebody said, if a doctor told you had that condition, vasomotoritis, you would immediately wonder, what in the world do I have? So lay language would be just saying, okay, instead of me telling you is that you have a condition that causes you to sneeze, and you have an allergy, and it's like an allergy and a cold combined almost.
Yeah. I once scared my father, God rest him, to death, because he was of the generation you never asked the doctor questions. So it's bad enough when a doctor is automatically talking in 12-syllable words. But if they just send you home, let's say, with a prescription, and you're trying to read this prescription and understand it, nowadays it's much easier. They have finally caught on, and they're putting sheets in that mostly say side effects and not contraindications or whatever. But my dad, God rest him, he comes home, and he's in Jersey, I'm living in Brooklyn. He calls his daughter, the medical health writer and reporter, and says, what does this drug do? Like, I'm a pharmacist. No, Daddy, I'm not a pharmacist. I'm not a nurse. I don't know every drug, and even if I did, I wouldn't just tell you. He says, but you have the reference book, and I did. There's a very famous book called The Physician's Desk Reference okay? And we used to have this huge book on our tables. I didn't even open the book. I decided to play with him. I said, "Oh, Daddy, it's a good thing you called. This thing makes dysmenorrhea." And he goes, "Really?" And he said, "Yes." Then he says, "Is this dangerous?" I said, "Well, it's especially dangerous. It's so rare in men. You must tell the doctor." "What is it?" he says. I said, "Daddy, it means your periods are not fluctuating properly." He was not happy with me. He was not laughing the way you do. And so if doctors, can you imagine if his doctors reeled off, "Well, sure, I'll tell you the side effects, Mr. Kilberg. It's dysmenorrhea and ataxia," and, pick out if you like the rhino whoosy-whatsy you just said.
Right.
I know rhino means your nose. Aside from that, even I didn't know what you were saying. So this is why, we have to always bring it down to all sorts of levels, right?
Right. So everyday people can understand it. People that don't have a medical degree or a nursing degree or any type of medical degree at all, that when your doctor explains what your condition is, you'll understand it in simple, as we say, layman's terms. So what is understandable to the average everyday person who does not have any type of background in medicine.
So how did you come to understand it? Because you're not a nurse or a doctor or anything like that. What got you into this?
Well, I guess since I was in my 20s, I was always interested in health and wellness. And at one point, I had some type of condition, and my husband had at the time said, "Well, you need to go to this doctor." Her name is Dr. Andrea Sullivan, and she's in D.C. And she's a naturopath, and she can help you. And we don't know exactly what's going on with you, but she'll do some tests and she'll let you know. So, I went to Dr. Sullivan, and she started telling me there were certain things that I needed to do to change my diet, what I was eating, and I needed to make sure that I was doing something that was really going to be something that I was passionate about. And so anyway, I talked to her, and she would always, break things down and tell me without any type of medical, because she's not a medical doctor, she's a naturopath. So she would tell me without going into this these 5 to 10 syllable words and explain exactly what was going on. And I would say, "Oh, is that what it is?" And it would be something that was not contagious or serious. But had I gone to a medical doctor, I know that MD, they probably would have gone into and explained it and terrified me. So I started writing about and then interviewing various medical doctors and naturopaths, and that's how I got started in the whole interested in lay language and educating people about what it is and what it is not.
Yeah, and to be fair to the doctors, not every one of them is terrible at this. And thank God they were when I was growing up. They were the masters of everything. They didn't have managed care beating their heads, and if they prescribed a drug or recommended a therapy. Now they have to be far more careful. But even now, if you don't meet the right folks, or you don't know how to ask the questions, doctors, pay attention, because more of you need to do patient education programs, the doctors, the nurses. I wrote an article for Johns Hopkins a while ago where they were giving medicines to patients who were getting ready to leave, and of course, the nurses asked, "Are you sure, Mr. McGillicuddy, you understand what this drug does and how to use it and so forth?" And of course, Mr. McGillicuddy said, yes, don't worry. And they would find, I forget what the stats were, but a terrible number, a major number of the patients got home and didn't take their drugs properly, forgot about them, put them aside, whatever, because they didn't really understand. And so somebody at Hopkins noticed this. I think she's a nurse practitioner or she's a director of a certain division, and they set up a special program where they train the nurses, other questions to ask, and really make sure Mr. McGillicuddy and Mrs. Smith and whomever, whatever their language level, whatever their education level, and more places have to make sure before they do the outpatient thing that their patients truly understand. And if the patient can't understand it, I report a lot on Alzheimer's. And I said to you a little while ago, I know a guy who's renowned internationally for doing billing issues on Alzheimer's, and they found out if somebody comes in alone, and even if they're in early onset, let alone late issues, half the time they don't remember their medicines or their allergies, and it's not written down, and the doctors figure, oh, okay, Mr. Smith has been recovered, we can send him home. And they send him home, and Mr. Smith makes the same mistakes because 10 seconds out the door he forgot what you told him, and he's back in the emergency room. And this goes back and forth, and it's not just bad for Mr. Hopkins or whatever his name was, I just said. It's bad for the hospital because by constantly getting the same patient over and over, it indicates you don't know how you're treating somebody, and it brings down your reputation, the scaling number they use for hospitals. So whether it's just to help the patients or just for your own billing, the health professionals have to do even better than they're doing now.
Absolutely. Well, I heard on the news recently that I believe it's CBS, they have decided that because, as you're saying, there were so many patients that are, especially the elderly patients, that are getting their medications confused. And now they have created a new type of bottle, medication bottle that it comes in that has, it's like color coordinated, and it has it has on there if they should take it in the morning, then there's a picture of a sun. If they should take it in the afternoon, I can't remember, but if there's a picture, if they should take it in the evening, there's a moon. So, and they've made it very easy, much easier for patients to understand when to take their medication, how many times, and they've made it enlarged it so that it's clear. And people are not over-medicating because that happens a lot, especially with elderly. And I know with my mother, instead of them having the same shape medicine, they've given her different medications, the same color, and so she's used to the color, and then the shape is one. And then all of a sudden they come out and they change the shape of the medication, and I'm like, what? Why did they change the shape? Why weren't they consistent with it? Because she's going to think that this is another medication. So, they have gotten better, but they still have a lot of room for improvement when it comes to helping and making patients, making it safer for patients to take their prescription medications.
And it's not just the doctors. I have terrible pharmacy stories still. I went in and I asked for some basic help with an over-the-counter med, and they have pharmacy assistants. They don't have a fully educated pharmacist. There's one of those, and the rest are assistants. And the assistants half the time just go, gee, I don't know. They don't even know where in the store. If you can come to them and say, I'm looking for XYZ cream, and they go, well, it's probably in women's health, like A, probably doesn't mean it is, and B, so where is the women's health section? And they shrug at you. So that's not good training right there. But I still remember the day my husband came home, I had a medication for a chronic illness, and it was coming, I forget, I think in oval gold colors in that dose, and when I used to take a higher dose and they trimmed it down, it used to be pink or something.
Right.
And Richard comes home with it. This is back in New York, again, a major pharmacy chain, and we had known the pharmacist, but then the chains changed, and apparently they didn't re-educate their new pharmacist because a bunch of the old ones left for various reasons. And he comes back with my medicine, and I open the bottle, and even without reading anything, I say, this is the wrong dosage. And it says it's the right dosage on the front. But I open the bottle, and I know the pill is wrong. I go downstairs, and it took forever to get the regular pharmacist, and then that person says to me, well, you're mistaken.